In 6 years, you'll be explaining instead of celebrating. Having some ragged list like I had, reasons for not doing well, pennies in my pocket. Could, should, don't, disaster. And if you'll just start the process of change, could, should, and will, you can start this whole process. And if you will, then put it into action. The miracle belongs to you. Jesus said to his disciple, it'll be simple. Go fishing, and the first fish you catch, look in his mouth. Peter said, okay. He was used to strange things happening in this relationship. Peter goes fishing, catches the first fish, looks in his mouth. Guess what's in the fish's mouth? Coin. Peter says, wow, coins. Starts counting the value of these coins, and when he adds it up, guess how much it added up to? Exactly enough money to pay his taxes and Jesus' taxes, which gives you Jesus' position on taxes. Now we call that what? A miracle. Only because we don't quite understand how it works. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. It simply means we don't quite understand how it works. But here's how you get a miracle going for your life. Number one, do what you can. Get a list of the stuff you could do and you haven't done, postpone, and start cleaning that up. You can't start at a better place for personal change. That'll affect your bank account, affect your future, affect your income, affect everything. You can't start a better life change process than cleaning up what you should be doing. The man says, well, my mother lives down in Florida. Should have written her 6 months ago. I just can't seem to get that letter written. I'm asking you to get that letter written, clean that up, and don't walk like other people walk. Don't postpone like other people postpone. You say, well, is it as simple as writing a letter? And the answer is yes. Where else would you start for life change, personal change? You don't need a pink package to fall out of the sky. You don't need massive bombard, pre-conscious, subconscious, practice channeling, find a 2,000-year gold guru. I mean, you don't need any of that stuff. Pass on all that. Kids are afraid of that stuff. Too much of it. You'll be out on a limb with Shirley. I mean, don't pass on all that stuff. This stuff's too easy. This stuff's too simple. It's called take action, number one, on neglect, on errors, in discipline. Number two, start setting up some discipline. And if you'll do that, you'll perform a miracle. Now, here's the second part of the miracle. Number one is do what you can. Here's number two, do the best you can. If that's not your philosophy, I would ask you to amend it. Let me give you the best of ancient script. Here's what it says. Whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your might, do it with all your strength, and do it with all your power. What a good philosophy. That kind of philosophy will revolutionize your life if you haven't picked it up lately. Guy slips in late, company doesn't seem to mind, slips out early, first one in the parking lot, heading for happy hour. Stretches his break, comes early for lunch, late back from lunch, company doesn't seem to notice. Guy says, best as I can calculate, I'm putting in about a half a day's work and I'm collecting a full day's pay. And the guy says, I got it made. Little does he know the seeds of his own disaster are already being sown by the weakness of his own personal philosophy. It's not the economy that's going to determine your next 6 years. It's your philosophy about labor and about activity and about miracle and soil and seed and sunshine and rain and the economy and the banks and the money and the companies and the schools and what's going on. It's your philosophy and your attitude and then your ability to take action. All of that we call the process of life change, miracle working. Number one, do what you can. Number two, do the best you can. Here was number four, results. Results. Every once in a while, you got to take a measure, see how you're doing with these three pieces, philosophy, attitude, activity. Now we take a measure called results. What is the results at the end of the day, the results at the end of the week? You can't let too much time go by without checking. When time goes by, 6 years I'd been out there working when I met my teacher, Mr. Shope. Shope said, well, Mr. Rohn, let's just go through a little summary here. He said, in the last 6 years, how much money have you saved and invested? Let's go through a little tab list here. How much money have you saved and invested the last 6 years? I said, what? 0. He said, you have messed up. You remember these notes. I like that. You've messed up. He said, who sold you on that plan? I thought, my gosh, the man's right. I'm a nice guy. I bought the wrong plan. What if you were 50 and broke? Right? Didn't need to change countries. Bought the wrong plan. What a sad scenario that would be. Shope said, these questions, let's go through some results. He said, how many books have you read in the last 90 days? I said, what? 0. Wisdom of the world available? Change your life, change your future? Wisdom of the world available? Develop any skill you want? Earn the kind of income you want? Have all the treasures you want? Equities you want? Relationship with your family that you want? Everything that you want available? And the wisdom of the world to help you get it? Haven't read any books in the last 90 days. My teacher said, Mr. Rohn, you have messed up. I'm telling you, you've got the deal.
I told T. Hobb when we were standing by the stage, I said, hey man, I want to work more with you. I want you to coach me. I want to learn from you. See, I found you're never too old to learn and you're never too young to teach. Always have a thirst for learning. So I listened to Paul Harvey every day on the radio. While in school, I would go out and listen in his car. He gave me his keys. I was working to develop myself. And I continued to listen to motivational messages, and he would take me to see the late Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote the book, The Power of Positive Thinking. I toured with him before he passed. You have something special. You have greatness within you. Don't allow your circumstances to determine who you are. Don't allow your negative thoughts to hold you back. You have something special. You can do more than you can ever begin to imagine. Dr. Peale was an incredible man. I admired him when he spoke. He gave me goosebumps. I can feel him in my heart. And I never forget, we were coming back to the school, and Mr. Washington said, Mr. Brown, yes, sir. When Dr. Peale spoke, you didn't move. When he spoke, you were hanging on every word he needed. When he spoke, we didn't have to tell you to sit down and be quiet. Why? I said, sir, I could feel him when he talked. I felt like he was talking to me, sir. He said, he was. I said, but he doesn't know me, but he was speaking to you. Did you feel him in your heart? I said, yes, sir. He said, most people feel him in their head. If you felt him in your heart, he said, listen to him, son. Follow him, learn from him. And I would go to seminars and workshops. Anywhere I would find where Dr. Peale was, I would be in the audience. I would drive 200 and 300 miles just to hear him speak. And my dream and vision was to share the stage with him. I thought about it. What is your goal? What is your vision? I want you to hold it in mind. There's some power in that, because when I became involved in speaking, I never forget, I got a call from Og Mandino, who wrote the book, The Greatest Salesman in the World. He said, Les, I'm stuck in Philadelphia. I need to be in Kankakee. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale is appearing. I can't make it. I heard you're in Chicago. I said, yes, I am. Can you go and open for me? I said, yes, man. Oh, my God. Dr. Peale, I said, yes, I'd love to do it. And I went there and I came. I said, hi, I'm Les Brown. He said, you're not the band of renown? I said, no, I'm Mrs. Mamie Brown's baby boy. I'm here to speak. He said, come backstage. And his wife, Martha, was there. And she said, Papa, Les Brown is here, the speaker. And he said, Les Brown, shoot for the moon. Because even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. I said, sir, that's my quote. I wrote you. When I was in the 11th grade, I was a part of a special education class project. That's my quote. He said, I know. I end all my speeches with that quote. And Dr. Peale had a great sense of humor. A young man was backstage, and I had so many questions to ask him, and my mind froze up, and the young guy said, Dr. Peale, how old are you? And he was up in age. He said, Sonny, I'm 92. The young man looked at him and said, I don't know if I want to live to get 92. He said, that's because you've never been 91.
So my dad's drinking was the ultimate blessing in my life, even though it was terrible as a child. So my dad got sober and became my best friend. It was really cool. I watched my dad have two lives. I watched the first 40 years of his life. My dad was a good man, just like a lot of you are, but living a bad way. Drinking, running around, probably doing all the stuff that comes with doing that. And then he got sober. And I watched him change his life. My dad's a humble man, and I didn't know this. My dad's sobriety was interesting. Just going to tell you this really quickly. My dad got sober, ironically, because he used to go to Hollywood to drink. So my dad went to an AA meeting where it was all famous people. But we lived 2 hours from there, which was the hood. So my dad would go to AA meetings in Hollywood with matter of fact, my dad's sponsor in AA is a very famous actor. And then my dad would come to the hood where we grew up and go to his AA meetings. And so my dad ended up, I didn't know this, but my dad for years helped people get sober quietly. 2 o'clock in the morning, a text, a lunch, a breakfast, anything you could ever do to just help another human being change their life. I never knew it because he would never tell me, didn't brag about it. When my dad died, he requested no funeral. Didn't want anybody talking about him. Plus it was COVID, but for years he didn't want one. But I got a call from the AA meeting my dad went to, and the guy said, we'd just like to honor your dad at a park. There'll be like 8 or 10 of us there. Would you come? I said, no, I'm not doing that. My dad said no. My wife said, you should just go. It's going to be 10 people. I show up to this park. Hundreds of people showed up. And they got up and said, we're here today to honor Ed Mylett. It's my own name. First dude walks up. He says, my name's Jerry. 34 years ago, Ed Mylett changed my life. I walked into a meeting. I had no hope. I thought I was going to die. This man grabs me and says, hey, let's have breakfast tomorrow morning. And he tells his story. Next guy gets up, big old Samoan dude. Said, I was incarcerated for 15 years. My best friend's Ed Mylett. He changed my life. Took every call, calls me every day. loves me, cares about me. Next guy gets up, very, very famous actor. Ed Mylett changed my life. I came to a meeting 17 years ago. I can't tell you how many phone calls I get from him, how many meetings we've had, how many times he's driven to see me when I was going to use again, driven hours and hours. One time he drove to Sacramento, drove 7 straight hours to see me because I thought I was going to use. He said, I'll be there in a minute. 7 hours later, my dad showed up. And I watched this whole meeting of these people just parading through about how my dad changed their life. And my dad had lung cancer and a really bad form of tumors wrapped all around his organs. And so my dad fought this for like 9 years. And the last time he went into the hospital, my dad finally called me and said, I want you to come get me. Except he didn't talk like that. My dad was down to about 10 breaths a minute. So my dad's voice was my voice. In fact, if you called his phone number right now, that voicemail's still on there, my dad's voice. But my dad would talk like this in the hospital. Dad, they'll give you another steroid shot. You need to fight this again. This is my dad's life for months. And I'm going to tell you what he said in my voice because it'll take too long. He said, I'm going to die in 2 days. I fought this for 9 years. I did this for your mom, you and your sisters and the grandchildren. I'm going to be gone in 2 days. I would like to die in my home with you and the sisters there. Come get me. I said, Dad. He says, I'm serious. I called his doctor. He goes, I'd get him home. I get my dad home. He's in his living room. I was with my dad when he passed away, so were my sisters. An hour before my dad died, an hour before. So when you're dying this way, just so you know, they count your breath. So my dad had gone from 50 breaths a minute to 20 to 10, some minutes 5, some minutes 3. Got to the point a couple hours before my dad died that he had a minute with no breaths. And so they took his pulse. He had no pulse. Then he would breathe again for a minute. So it took a long time. And my dad was really running out of breath. He was basically suffocating to death. And I tell you this because we thought he was gone, and he came back, and then he had a couple half-hour windows of like 40 breaths a minute. His phone keeps ringing. It's got oxygen. He goes, Debbie, who's calling? And she says, it's 9:09. Answer it. My dad's got 2 hours left. Answer it. She says, no, I'm not answering it. He says, grab it. He knew who it was, and he knew that was someone who needed him. And my mother handed him the phone on morphine, drooling, oxygen, pulls it out. You can. And I watched him for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. My dad talked this dude off the ledge and changed his life. Bernardo was the last speaker at that service I went to a week later. So in my dad's last minutes of his life, my dad was still changing people's lives, was still making a difference in the world. The reason I tell you that story is not to applaud for my dad. I tell you that story because who are you when no one's watching? Who are you when there's no incentive for you? My dad doesn't get any credit for that. He had no idea I was going to tell this story. In fact, he'd be embarrassed if I did. Who are you when nobody's watching? What's the real difference you make in the world?
See, the reason I know I talk like this, I've been at every economic level there is. Because my father was rough, man. Let me tell you a story. I was in college. My father didn't help me. I got in real bad trouble one time. I called home and said, Dad, I need some money. All right. So 4 days later, in the mail, an envelope came. It had 2 index cards so you couldn't see the money. When I opened it up, it had a note on the index card, and it was a $5 bill. I pulled it out, saw the $5. The note said, this shit gonna have to stop. 4 times. That's what the note said, though. You would lose effect if I did not read you what my daddy wrote. And my daddy dead, so I think that's a free will. Just let me have it. That's how my father was. I'ma support you just enough, keep him dying. This is enough to buy a sandwich and some water so you can live on to the next crisis. So I've been at every eco level. I know what it's like to thousand. So when I tell you what the 100 feel like, see, and enjoy the ride along the way. Quit waiting until you're a millionaire to celebrate. There's joy in the journey. Listen to me. If you was making 50,000 and you now make 100,000, that should be a mini celebration in your life. When you go from 100,000 to 250, that should be another mini celebration in your life. You got to buy some stuff to reward you along the way. There's joy in the journey. You don't have to wait till you're a millionaire. I want to be a billionaire. I really do. Because there's 3 black billionaires: Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, and Robert Smith. I didn't research it. I researched because that's where I want to go. Well, Steve, why you want to have a billion? Because they printing the money. There's joy in where I'm at right now. Oh, please understand I'm cool. But if I could get $1 billion though. See, Brother Blue has went with me, has traveled up to Washington, D.C. to Dr. Ben Carson at HUD. Well, let's talk about that for a second. I done had some things happen to me, man. President Obama's transition team. I was getting off a plane one day. Assistant called and said, Steve, President Obama's transition team. President Obama and I were friends. I've interviewed, he's been on my talk show. I've been to the White House and interviewed him. He's been on my radio show more than anybody's show. I go to their parties. We friends. So his transition team called me around the 9th of January and said, Steve, the president feels like it's important that we sit down and have a conversation with this new administration to see if there's something to work out. Not President Obama, just his transition team from White House. I said, okay, cool. Next thing I know, the Trump administration transition team gets in touch with the Obama transition team. My name come up. So on January 13th, they asked me to come to Trump Tower to meet with Donald Trump. Now, the hell I call it, the sheer misery for making that decision. I've been so many coons, Uncle Tom, sellouts. I was stunned. I mean, the brutality of what happened to me on social media behind visiting that man in Trump Towers, it was alarming. But I'm sitting up in here and I'm trying to figure out, because you don't know, so since you don't know, here come the hate. Uncle Tom, sellout, coon, Steve Harvey, shoe shiner, celebrity friends I thought I was really cool with, coming out talking about he ought to know better. What the hell wrong with him? Whoa. If President Obama, the current president, and the incoming president say they won't talk to you, which one of you ain't going up there? Just raise your hand if you wouldn't go, so I can see how stupid you are. Now just go ahead. I just want to see. This is what I be really wanting to say. See, I can't say none of this in front of another group, but since it's us in here, I've been wanting to say this since January 13th. You better believe this right here. I've been waiting on the right crowd. Well, I'm in front of a bunch of friends right now. So see, I can say this because I'm around a bunch of friends. You understand? Friendship is essential to the soul. You can live without your father. You can live without a relative. You can make it without your mama. You can't live in this world without a friend. Friendship is essential to the soul. Oh, Philly supas. That's friendship is essential to the soul. Yeah, I've been waiting on this. I'm glad Ricky Lewis asked to come.